Hi, my name is Amy Natt, and I am the CEO of Aging Outreach Services, and this is All Things Aging.
And I'm Amy Phariss. I'm editor of Outreach NC, our monthly publication, which actually we have a couple of them right here. Looks like this. We send this out every month for our clients and within the community. And today we're going to be talking about financial caregiving.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so when I think of caregiving, the first thing that comes to mind is not finances.
Yes, that's probably typical.
So the first thing I think about is like housekeeping, bathing, stuff like that.
Physical.
Physical, yes.
Yes.
And then
Much
there's
more
also
obvious.
Emotional caregiving.
Correct.
What is financial caregiving?
So financial caregiving is basically providing support to an older adult who needs a little extra help. It could be managing their finances. It could be balancing the checkbook. It could be reviewing bills as they come in, insurance statements, all the things that sort of require numbers and what you would think of as managing your household finances.
Okay, so I know that there are a lot of changes, and we've talked about this in the aging population, the American population.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what those changes are?
Yeah, so I ran some basic stats when I was looking at this. And so these numbers are interesting to me. But if you look at 2019, over 16% of our population was 65 plus. And we all know that the baby boomers have sort of started reaching retirement age. And so, of course, our population is aging. By the year 2040, 20% of the population will be over 65. If you look at numbers of people who have lived to 80 plus, those numbers have basically doubled over the last 50 years. So people are not only living longer, but they're living more active lives as well.
So they're living longer, healthier, more engaged lives. Okay. Why are these numbers significant for financial caregiving?
So if you think about the more people that we have getting older, and especially the more people who live to 80 and beyond, those people are much more likely not only to need some type of assistance as they age in managing finances, but also in looking at the cost of care for people as they age. So there's sort of different aspects to the financial side of aging and financial caregiving.
Okay. What are some of the reasons somebody might need financial caregiving?
So there's a lot of different things that could happen. I think the one we think of most often is that somebody has like a health crisis, right? So they're in the hospital or they have a significant health change. They might need somebody to step in, help manage the household finances, make sure the bills are paid. There's also the issue of somebody who's having some cognitive changes as they get older, whether it's some type of dementia or they've had a stroke. But the part of the brain that sort of processes it is able to multitask and do things that require numbers, right? And being able to sort of process that, it can be impacted. And so those people might need a little extra assistance. It could also be that somebody's in their second phase of retirement and they are traveling and they need somebody to help manage the finances while they're away. Another scenario that we've seen, especially with the 85 plus population, is if one of the spouses in the relationship has always managed the finances and then that spouse passes away and the spouse that's remaining has never managed the household finances. They're not familiar with the different bank accounts. Maybe they're not familiar with the new technology, online banking, that type of thing. So that person may need somebody to step in and provide some additional support.
That's interesting because my mom's husband just passed away and he always managed the finances. And so now my sister and her husband are going over once a week and helping her. Not that she can't do it, but just keeping track of everything and having another set of eyes. So that is, I guess, informal.
So that would be more informal financial caregiving. So that's often when typically an adult child, but it could also be a family friend. It could be somebody that you hire as care manager. Sometimes we'll get older adults who are perfectly capable of still making decisions and have the capacity to manage their finances, but things can be tricky if you think about all of the mail that comes in, right? You see people with stacks of mail. So sometimes just going through that and trying to decipher what's real, what's potentially a scam or what's junk mail, which bills have been paid, are they auto paid? Do you need to go in and pay them? Like it can get overwhelming. And so an informal caregiver might be somebody who just sits down and helps you organize a system for managing those bills. Maybe it's a household budget, or maybe, again, it's just how the future cost of care is going to be met, or kind of what your finances are and how long those are going to last you. There can be a lot of different scenarios that you're still able to make those decisions legally, but you just need somebody as a sounding board or to help with those day-to-day tasks.
So you can have somebody help you look both at the big picture and then also with the small details.
Yeah, definitely.
Monthly.
And think about even, a lot of times older adults will have medical appointments, or maybe there was a hospital stay. Think of all the insurance statements that you get or the explanation of benefits. It can get overwhelming. And sometimes having a second set of eyes to sort of look at those and help organize those can be super helpful, especially as somebody's getting a little bit older.
And I can imagine, like, just the other day, I got a notice from the IRS saying that they had misallocated some of my tax payments. And I was overwhelmed by that. I didn't know what it meant.
And is it real? Is it a scam?
Real? Yeah. So I had to go to my CPA. So having somebody else sit with you and just say, we can figure this out together, or just have, hey, we need to pay attention to this. This can get lost in the stack of mail.
Right.
Yeah.
All of that is super important and can be helpful just to sort of keep somebody on track. A lot of times around tax season, when an older adult's getting ready to prep their stuff for end of year, that's another time that might be helpful to step in and just have an extra set of eyes and ears to help organize things and just sort of make sense of it all, make sure nothing is missed.
Especially if with technology things are changing, and then having somebody who's
a little more tech savvy,
and can say,
like your grandchild or my child. That's what I use. When I
can help you pay this online, or I can whatever. Yeah, kind of sit with you through it. What would be an example of formal financial caregiving?
So there certainly are times as a person gets older, well, for all of us, but particularly with aging, that somebody may no longer have the capacity to make legal financial decisions. And so we'll talk in other episodes, but there are things you can put in place, right? People think about healthcare power of attorney or somebody to make those decisions, but durable power of attorney is equally as important. And somebody who, if you are incapacitated in some way, whether temporarily or ongoing, that person then has a legal authority to step in and help you or help make and manage finances for you.
What would be an example of one of those decisions?
So it could be if you are in the hospital and unable to make decisions for one reason or another. It could be somebody who could literally step in and sign for you as your power of attorney at the bank. So it could be making a house payment. It could be paying your bills. It could be moving money. If you have major bills that need to be paid because of a medical crisis, it could be working with your financial investor if things need to be moved. It could be real estate decisions if you were to go into a facility setting and something needed to be done with your home. So it can be big decisions, or it can certainly be just keeping the day things running until you're able to do that again.
So when you say if you go into the hospital, I'm thinking that there are situations where this happens out of the blue and unexpected.
Sure.
And if you don't have a durable power of attorney now, what would happen?
I mean, it would be like if you or I stepped away from our lives suddenly and just left everything. Somebody would have to figure out what you have, where it is, what needs to be paid. And so it can be very difficult, especially on the financial side, to step into somebody else's life. And so the more planning you've done, the more you've written things down and given somebody the authority to act on your behalf, it will be much easier for those in your life that are trying to step in and help. And you don't have to share, financial stuff can be sensitive. You don't have to share every detail of that with your adult child just because they're your durable power of attorney, but maybe you have it all written down someplace. Right. So that if something did happen, they would know what are your accounts, what needs to be paid, how do you pay that, and is really able to step in and provide that support for you.
And can you decide what level you want that person to operate? Like maybe you want them on your bank account. A friend of mine, his mother passed away and he couldn't get her bank account without going through the courts because his name was listed.
Power of attorney. Right. If you're power, So normally your attorney, right? If you have an elder law attorney or somebody doing your estate plan, they can write that durable power of attorney document. So it's very specific on what authority that person has and what they can do. And then they can then take that document to the bank and be able to act on your behalf. So it's important. You want to stay in control of those decisions.
So you've kind of talked about this a little bit throughout, but give me some examples of what a financial caregiver would do specifically.
So I think it depends on what your needs are, but I can think of clients that I've had over the years that still wanted to maintain control, but we would sit down once a week, balance a checkbook, make sure the bills were paid, sort through mail as the year went on and we got closer to tax season or whatever, that they needed to get all of that organized to be able to hand over to their accountant. So sometimes it's just that daily oversight and kind of making sure that things don't get double paid or something doesn't get missed. It's just a second set of eyes and ears.
And that's important. I interviewed a woman for the newsletter a couple of years ago who does this professionally. She does the checks and balances of daily living. And she said it's important for things like life insurance policies. If you don't pay that 1 month, there goes your policy.
Right.
So having another set of eyes. And she also had a lot of clients who traveled overseas. Maybe they took a year-long cruise and they needed somebody to manage their finances while they were gone, or they had homes in 2 different states.
That happens. And there are professionals, right? So as care managers, we do that, but there are also other professionals. You want to make sure you know what their qualifications are. They have professional liability insurance, things like that. But there are people out there. We think of financial advisors, but really they're doing the big picture a lot of times with investments. So there are people that will come to your home and help you with just the day-to-day stuff. And so having somebody like that in place is great. And then the long-term plan of having a durable power of attorney or somebody that can manage those things when you're really no longer able to. So it's sort of important to have both the informal supports in place initially and then something long-term, more formal for when you need that. So.
And she made the point in our conversation of saying she does the financial caregiving, but she's not a financial advisor or a lawyer. She works with them.
Right.
It's sort of like a team of people who manage your finances.
Definitely. And these can be, when you start to see red flags, whether it's your parents, whether it's a family friend, these can be really difficult conversations to have because typically, like you said, if somebody notices a physical problem or even mental health issues or emotional support that's needed, if a time of grief or whatever, like we're more likely to sort of notice those red flags and step in and help. Finances is a little bit more difficult to overstep some of those boundaries. And so it is really important to have these conversations and sort of normalize starting to talk about these things.
Well, when I think about the physical and the emotional, those you can kind of see. You can go to somebody's house and see if there's food in the fridge or
right. You're not going to just sit and go through their bills and their bank account.
Right. This is like almost an invisible.
Yep. And so it's important to be proactive for yourself too, at any age, to think about who would that person be who would step in and help me. You're sort of just building your support network as you go.
So as we're talking, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I need to make a list of my accounts and who am I going to designate. So what are some tips for choosing the right person?
So obviously you want somebody who you consider, they don't have to be a financial wizard, but are they responsible with their own finances? Are they detail oriented? Are they organized? And are they trustworthy? Because certainly there's a lot of scams and financial abuse that takes place, and older adults are often a target of that. And so it's very important to know who you're trusting with this information and to have some checks and balances in place, right? So
what do you mean by checks and balances?
No, if somebody, well, for example, if somebody's helping you sort of prep all your end of year finances and accounts, then your accountant's going to be the final person to go through that. Or if somebody's helping you manage day-to-day bills and what funds are available to pay for what, and if money has to be moved, well, maybe then you still have a financial advisor who's really overseeing that. Or even if it is an adult child sort of checking in on things, it's always good to have some checks and balances. But in general, obviously you want somebody you can trust and that you feel like has some knowledge and is good with numbers and managing finances.
So there's a difference between being able to trust somebody, because I think we would all think, oh, our children. But then that person may not be good with finances, or they could have small children and live out of state and not have the capacity and the time. Yeah. So what would you suggest if you don't have a family member who you either trust or somebody who's available? What would you suggest there?
So I think in that case, you look to one of the professionals, whether it's care management or, like you said, there are people that will come in and just do sort of checks and balances with your checkbook, helping you pay bills. So I think having somebody like that that's been vetted, somebody you can get references on, somebody that your adult children can do some research on some of their credentials and background and even meet them with you so that they feel comfortable about who's involved, because it is a sensitive topic. So I think you certainly can find a professional if there's not a family member that you would trust to do that.
What a difficult conversation it is, and how it's sometimes difficult to identify the need. What would you say somebody should look for with a family member just to identify, hey, this might be an issue. I might need to talk to my parents or my sibling or whomever about financial caregiving?
So I think normally you'll see some red flags if you're looking. Mail stacking up is one of those. The inability to manage end of year taxes is another one of those. Even asking basic questions about how they pay the bills, or if somebody's not able to sort of answer those questions in any detail, or you notice lights get turned off or whatever. There can be different red flags to look for. So again, I think it's just not being afraid to broach a difficult conversation and asking, how's that going? Are you able to keep up with managing the day-to-day finances? Have you thought about a plan for your future and how you might fund future care, and sort of looking at the big picture as well?
And what about little things like, I've been out and people haven't been able to like calculate a tip as easily. You'll kind of be like, you do this, I don't want to do this right now.
Sometimes it's eyesight. Sometimes it's, numbers take a lot of multitasking in the brain to process some of those equations. So I think anytime you're noticing things like that, it's good to go ahead and broach the topic.
All right. Well, thank you. This is as we've noted, sensitive topic, but I feel like I understand it better.
Yeah.
And I have a better picture of what I need to do.
Right.
And
we
what
all
I
do.
might need to do in terms of helping somebody else.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks.